Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Azazel. This run was insultingly bad, and it wasn't bad in the sense that maybe we were weak, it was just bad in the sense that it didn't really offer anything for us that was unique or just, I didn't have fun, and I think that's a very big part of Isaac for me. I usually play these dailies, first of all for competitive nature of it, because then you can talk about it daily, but also because of fun, and whenever you have a run as Azazel, I do find it tends to go two ways. Either you get really powerful really fast, or you're stuck in this position where maybe you do get some items, maybe you're okay, but because you have short range, you're stuck in a ditch where you really can't deal with enemies a lot. Especially with the Curse of the Blind on the first floor, on the second floor, and the D1 in the first floor, you can expect that the variance will already be high. And the game is kind of telling you and forcing you to go in one particular direction. With the D1, whenever you pick up a breaking item, you kind of have to know that you have to either break the game sooner than later and then replace that active item, or you have to keep it until you maybe beat Hush and then you can actually take the time to do it. Which means that the game locks you in a very specific playstyle, which I don't really enjoy. I don't think that the run should go like this. I don't think any player that's playing or trying to go for a high rank should be forced in one particular scenario, especially from the second floor. And it doesn't bother me. Breaking doesn't bother me. I think I've said it already, but just the fact that when you find an active item so early on, and it's a very uninteractive active item, you really can't do much with the D1 except duplicate consumables, and that doesn't sound really fun, but because of just the nature of the game and because you're trying to gun it for a high score, you kind of have to stick with it. And I think I would be okay with that on pretty much any other character, but what made this particular run maybe most unfun I've had in a long time is that not only did we get items which just don't really work with Azazel, not even that they don't synergize well, it's just they don't do anything. So Apple, I thought it was gonna work like Tough Love. It's gonna give us a chance every time we deal damage to an enemy with Little Brimstone, so whenever we do a tick of damage, it's gonna be a chance to deal increased damage. And I thought Apple's was gonna work the same way, but from what I could tell, it doesn't actually work, which means that it's, and again, one of those items which doesn't just synergize well. One of the other items that I got was Tech X, which also doesn't work with Azazel, and I think the third one which just doesn't work is the Pencil. It's such a bummer, because you can see that there's a reroll machine here, and you can imagine that it would be good to stop at a certain point, but when you find Tech X and you're forced to reroll it, because you know that picking it up is not gonna do anything, it always kinda leaves a sour taste in my mouth. Besides that, because of the Curse of the Blind, it's Curse of the Blind, so when you can see the items on the second floor, we were forced to go into the Devil Deal, and then there were 3 items, and you can pick only 2 of them up, because you had at maximum 2 health in that point. Thankfully, that didn't really make much of a difference, because the items weren't that powerful on their own. I think one of them were Sacrificial Dagger, Lil Delirium, and something else I can't remember, because I didn't pick it up, but I did read about it, but so I decided to pick up Little Delirium and Sacrificial Dagger, and obviously in this situation you want the Sacrificial Dagger, and I think that Sacrificial Daggers, or just orbitals in general, do make the difference between people who maybe make it to boss rush and between people who don't, just because you can use those offensive orbitals to deal damage to one much quicker, and you kind of have like an extra minute, or maybe let's say 40 seconds to explore the rest of the floor, and that can mean the difference between you winning the run or just losing one. Not winning in turns, but just getting a high score, because you do boss rush or you don't. And with the D1 especially, and all of these items combined, we also got a car battery, and the shop had a restock machine in it, which just screams variance to me. And I whenever I see a position like this, whenever I see a situation where I know that some people are gonna just have vastly different runs because they're gonna reroll with different amounts of time, maybe they're gonna take more time to do something, and I'm gonna miss out on maybe a very good potential synergy or maybe items which would allow me to just get a very high score. And in this position that I am now, you would say this is actually a really good run, and I wouldn't disagree, because first of all, we have all of the tools that we need to break the game. The only thing we need to get is a Yara rune, and with the Sackhead, whatever, there's actually a very good chance that we're gonna get that eventually. And of course, when we do, we can then use the D1 to duplicate a Yara rune, go in the next room with battery charges, and then duplicate those with the Yara rune, and then we can just kind of keep doing and just producing Yara runes, especially with the car battery, which means we're gonna get 2 Yara runes instead of 1, and then we can use that to duplicate basically every consumable and just get a lot of points that way. What was maybe the most insulting? A lot of things were insulting up until this point, but I think the most was just how bad it is to play as Azazel on the dank depths. And not just the dank depths, but obviously every enemy which has some form of range attack, or maybe which explodes, or maybe explodes into tears. Dealing with those enemies is incredibly frustrating, because you can't get close enough. There's usually no time for you to actually get in, deal the damage that you want to do, and then get out without not being hit. This is especially apparent in boss rush, or at least with some combination of boss rush, where bosses spawn in enemies, and you have to get close and personal, but with charging enemies, sometimes it's very hard, if not almost impossible to dodge, and it's really one of those things that just highlights how important range is in this game. Whenever you get a range up, you might say, another bad item, which I wouldn't really want. But I tell you, just play this daily, and you'll be so happy the next time you find a range up item, because it's actually gonna do something. And I think that range is a very underappreciated stat. But I do agree that in most cases it's not that big of a problem, just because the default range is already pretty big enough, or at least long enough, so you can actually deal with enemies without being in too much danger. So at this point, I was kind of getting a bit frustrated. Not in the sense that I was ready to rage quit or anything like that. It was just I wasn't really having fun. So I decided maybe what can I do to just enjoy this run a little bit. Of course, I first of all I had to get some health. I was hoping that I would make it to Harsh at this point. I did kind of give up because I think I wouldn't make it that fast. But looking back at it, if I just made a run for it, I think I would be actually able to get there. And with the one dice room, I decided, at this point, I just feel like, sure, I have all the breaking tools, I can break the game, I can essentially get a lot of points and have a good daily, but it's not really gonna be anything unique or special, so I decided, I'm gonna reroll and let's see what happens. With the reroll, thankfully, it turned out much, much better, and the run was starting to take shape, at least in some sense. We got anti-grav, which works just wonderful with Brimstone. We also got Bouncing Tears, and with Bouncing Tears, especially with Little Brimstone, you can use the walls to bounce them off and deal damage through the whole room, so it works kind of like a big Brimstone, except maybe a bit more interactive. At this point, I also decide I'll drop the temperance down. I noticed I have the wafer, I didn't really see that effect on the right, but I decided to just kind of take it and just play the temperance card, try to get as many coins as possible. I take Dark Judas, go outside, kill myself so I get respawned in the Devil Deal so I can pick up an additional spirit card just to be a bit safe, and then I decide to go from there. And you can see that at this point the run actually did go ballistic. So we had stairs, we had a really low tier delay, but we also had bouncing tears and continuum shots, and also shielded tears, which means that now we have this impenetrable shield of tears which enemies can get us, and even if they can, our tears will just kind of bounce around. And it was a fun experience, and I definitely don't regret re-rolling, even though it did cost me a lot of points, especially getting to Harsh and the ability to not break the game. I feel like this is much more important than just having yet another good score, which are plentiful in some regard. And if you really try and do your best at it, I think you can make it too. Getting a high score really isn't that much about playing well, maybe to a certain degree, but it's definitely more about just being patient and just really abusing every single aspect of the game that you can. And understand a lot of people don't really like that, and honestly in some cases I do like that, that's why I play dailies, but in some cases I just really want to have fun, and thankfully this run did turn out to be pretty fun in the end. We had the mulligan, I think it's called the mulligan, the one that costs flies, and it really did come in handy here. With Infestation 2 especially, I just had an army of spiders and flies, and usually whenever you have these two items, it does become overwhelming for the enemies, because you just spawn a ton of flies, and mainly the spiders and the flies are dealing damage and killing enemies. But in this particular case, it did feel very balanced. I did feel like 50% of the damage, 50% of the damage was done with the flies and the spiders, and 50% of the damage was done with the tears, and especially seeing them bounce around was really fun. And it's one of those things that doesn't really happen often, getting synergies which not only work well with the game, but are also very exciting to look at and just exciting to play as. And for that reason I decided to explore the dark room, even though I knew it might be a bit dangerous. Thankfully there were no very, very hard rooms like Double Cage or Double Adversary. This was a very kind dark room to us. It felt very rebirthy or maybe afterbirthy without too much of those bullshit enemies. Of course, with Dark Judas especially, we also get damage, but we get the ability to actually shoot enemies beyond a certain range. And if I knew that there was Dark Judas, I would definitely make a better impression to get to Harsh, because that means it'll be just much easier to deal with. But maybe what ticked me off the most was that there was a 5 dice room on Depths 1. I think it was Depths 1 on the 5th floor, I believe. Which means that if you're really fast, which means that if somehow you knew about it, or maybe you're just a fast player and you maybe ignored some abilities to break the game before, or maybe you didn't use the D1 as much as I did, you were able to make that, do an additional floor, and then get to boss rush and Harsh and do all of the rest. But that also means that the items that you get will change severely, I believe, because you essentially get a whole new floor with whole new generated items, which means that I think it will affect which items you get later on in the boss rush. The devil deals will change because they'll shift, because maybe if you get one, your stats will reset, and all in all, it's just one of the situations where I feel like a lot of things could have went wrong, or at least not wrong, but a lot of things could have went different if you just kind of knew about what the run actually had in store for us. With that said, we did finish the run with 34,000 points, which is not good at all. 44,000 points for a Mega Satan run. If I did go to Harsh, we would finish this run in a much more comfortable spot with 5,000, let's say 6,000 points more, so I would be at like 49,000 and maybe 500, and that would be a much better score, obviously something that maybe I'm a bit more used to, and that would definitely propel us from like 170th place to maybe like top 50, maybe top 100 at the end of the day. But nevertheless, what's important is that I had fun at the end. I actually explored the dark room and I didn't feel bad when I got hit, and I think that's the most important takeaway here. So if you do give it a chance with this run, I think if you play the daily, I'm interested where your run went, because I think this was again one of those runs that can really evolve in multiple directions, and I assume that most people, or at least most people, have had a much different run than I did, because maybe they didn't take certain items, they knew they didn't synergize, or maybe they just reroll different items and they got something else out of it. With that said, I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.